Hi, welcome
Nope.
to Wednesday.
Wait a second.
Oh, okay. There we go. Hi, welcome to Wednesday night live streaming on the Sisters Interview. My name is Ashaxi. I'm a member of the Order of the Laurel in the Kingdom of Ontir. My sister is Serifkin, Pelican, Lion of Ontir. And tonight we are interviewing Berek and Liesel von Langenthal, who are both Pelicans, Count and Countess, multiple summits, royalty, and both Lions of Ontir. So
all the
welcome.
stuff.
So how did you guys find the SCA?
I think I found it first. It was kind of a weird story on how not to recruit people. I'd always loved medieval things, Renaissance art. Like in 5th and 6th grade, I was checking out art books and everything I could find from the library and keeping them too long. And anyway, when I went off to college at UC Davis, they had a campus fair and I saw this group. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for this all my life, right? The whole fantasy of the Middle Ages. And then, so I went to the dorm room like 2 days later and they were making shoes for 12th night. And it was really like how not to recruit people, you know? And I said, well, what's 12th night? Tell me about it. Sounds like, oh no, you won't want to go to that. You know, nobody new wants to go to that. And this was back quite a long time ago in the 78. And so in the early 70s. And so I just kind of was turned off by it, I think, because it was, yeah, I don't know. There was just something about it that I didn't like. And so that was even before I met Berek. And so I just kind of left that on the side. And I really didn't see their presence anywhere around campus at all. I never saw them. And I was pretty active in band and sorority and some other things. So then we met, right. And it was the first year we were out of school, right?
First year we were out of school. We were living in the South Bay, San Francisco Bay Area. And I had a friend who said, hey, let's go to a science fiction fantasy convention. And this was October of 1978. And it was up in Marin County, across Peacock Feathers. And we went in, we said, oh my God, it was
the fighting demo. Yeah. Let's just say it was just fighting. Well,
there was also arts and sciences.
No, there wasn't.
Okay, so we had fighting. Just like, fighting. This is really, really cool. Where do you guys arts? Oh, we happen to be down in Santa Clara, San Jose. And so, we got an address. We showed up to one of the bigger fighter practices, and we've been hooked ever since.
So I think the kind of cool thing about ours was so we went that weekend, and we went to the fighter practice at Southern Shores on Monday, and that was the Monday after Radnor had won his very first West Crown, and that was his home. Yeah, he was pretty young. That was his home, and so we got to know that group pretty quickly. DuPaul lived there. Berek, soon to be Knight, was there, and so it was a really different introduction because we were brand new and knew the Crown Prince and didn't know the Crown Princess as well, but so we kind of got sucked in with that group for a while. And so that was a very interesting take on seeing behind the scenes before most people see behind the scenes, but we loved it. Yeah, we did a few. Gave me here's your early Christmas present, and it was a sewing machine so I could make us clothes to go to our first little revel.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. I'm sure that's not the only story that you hear like that in the SCA. Our clothes are pretty, yeah, every so often I'll post my very first outfit. It was pretty sad. Pretty typical. I looked like a little hobbit. So yeah, that's kind of what we did. My family had camped a lot, so we stopped at my mom's house for an event and picked up the old family canvas, Coleman tent and the sleeping bags, no air mattress. We showed up at our first event in the back. We drove a Toyota Celica for a very long time. We had a tent, an ice chest with no ice in it, with orange juice and like salami and everything you think of, sleeping bags with no pads. We got there, nobody knew how to set up the tent, but we had a great time. We were just hung out with that kind of whole retinue. And I don't know, people from the West would know, but there was the Hawaiian boys, they called them, it came over, and they had all come, they knew Radnor. And so it was just a really nice introduction. Not a lot of service, more just really knowing the SCA. What do you have to add?
Nothing.
Yeah, you do.
No.
Oh, I talk a lot.
And so you guys pretty much found the SCA together.
Yes.
Yeah, we did. We came into it together.
Right.
That's awesome.
yeah, what was I going to say? So yeah, we hooked up with, he's now Earl Thomas, the Incomplete. And we just really clicked with them, and they were the ones that really kind of set our ways in the SCA and that whole group about what it was. And we weren't, we worked with people on retinue, but we weren't really serving at that point. It's kind of that point, like I feel with people, you need to find what the SCA and find some joy in it before you're pushed into working really hard for it, I think.
Yeah.
You need to feel included, but you need to be exposed to all the aspects of it and feel kind of cool about it and say, oh yeah, I do want to do more of this. So
you got to kind of find your niche first before you get sucked down a hole that you don't want to go down.
Yeah, and we were really, really new to it. I think our second, Berek became squired because Thomas got knighted pretty quickly.
Right.
And squired Berek, and then Berek went on to Strider and Catherine. When they were in the West too, he was asked to be on their guard. So we kind of got sucked in that way. And then that's when we got engaged. And you should tell the story of our first coming to Antir.
Oh, all right.
The first very, it's kind of funny. It's like kismet.
And again, it came in a time where Antir was considering, wanted to become independent. And the Kingdom Seneschal at the time, Yerrit de Granada, approved having a crown tournament in Corvallis, Oregon, at the Willamette Park, far south of Antir. And we were living down in the Miss, and of course, everyone in the Miss and Sanaga were all upset, like, oh, why do we have to travel so far for a crown tournament? And the Kingdom Seneschal said, well, Antir, being a principality, is part of the West, and we really need to go up there. And we're going, oh, okay, fine. So, Liesel and I loaded up the Silica, drove up, an 8-hour drive. And at this time,
like, oh my God, we drive this far for an SCA event.
I mean, really, there was a questionnaire that was going around at the time talking, early part of the land fund. How far are you willing to drive from the central part of the Bay Area for permanent land? And the only 4 choices were obviously 0 to 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. And that was it. Needless to say, the Ontarians were not really happy with this because they would constantly point out that the Ontarians would typically drive 8 hours to drive down. Steingram, when he won his first crown, drove all the way from Portland, Oregon down to Lodi, California, about a 10 or 12-hour drive, saying, I just drove down and won my crown tournament. So anyway, we drive up to, we're coming through the south part of 99W, and we're going, wow, what an isolated little place.
Kind of a dump.
Yeah, kind of a dump.
South part of town.
South part of town. It's Willamette Park. And of course, you had all the, Ontarians all kind of clustered together. You had all the Mistians and Sonagwans all clustered together. And we're going like, these are our Western neighbors. And there's obviously a lot of separation, Ontarians and all this. Let's see. And of course, the running gag is will Radnor exceed his average of 2 shots per fight as he goes through? By the second round, Mistress Grunder Spitzenkoppler was already tatting.
Who is now known as Duchess Wanna. She was Mistress Grunder Spitzenkoppler back then.
Right, but Duchess Wanna was immediately tatting tables, and me being the pinhead King's Guard, asking like, what are you doing? And says, oh, Radnor's going to win this, so I better have the favors ready to go. And sure enough, Radnor goes through. This is where Radnor first encountered Torgal, and which was one of his longest fights. So it's like, just wow, there's a lot of characters up here in Antir. I hope I never have to come back. Within 6 to 9 months, I was given a job offer where we came right back to Corvallis, and we're just going like, wow, here we are. Being the typical Westie, we were kind of not quite bad mouthing it, but joking at it. And
well, I think it was because we had the page, which was the Western newsletter back then, and we kept trying to find what was going on in Antir, right? Because everything was put in the Kingdom newsletter, and we couldn't find anything that was happening. And of course, this is the days before we had computers. And I know Rowena was saying this, and I know that Eduardo said it the other day, but joining the SCA before the age of the internet was really interesting because they had the books that told you how to costume in the SCA. You could make the Viking tablet out of tea towels and, the whole bit. It was really interesting. So there wasn't any other way to check to see what was going on Tier except through the page. And it looked like Tier maybe had one event a year. We're like, wow, we're just kind of really getting into the SCA. This is kind of sad until we got up here. But that was interesting. Yeah, and we left so quickly. We were ready to leave the Bay Area anyway. So we left and we moved up, and we actually met some really cool people up here and found out Tier was very active. They just didn't bother putting it in the page because why? So yeah, we started going to fighter practices. We drove to Three Mountains. It was about an hour and a half, which was unheard of in the Bay Area, but we drove up to Three Mountains for fighter practice and started getting to know the people up there and worked with the people in Portugal. It was still a pretty small shire. And it was funny because then they had another crown up here.
Farther north?
Yeah, it was up in Washington somewhere near Blathanor, I think.
Yes.
And it was a crown I remember because I was pregnant with my first child. And like James Graham came up to Berek and said, Berek, where have you been? You just disappeared. And got like, oh, we moved. He goes, you didn't tell anybody. I said, no, we like left within 2 weeks.
I could have sworn I told my knight. And
yeah,
his night. And he may have forgotten. But yeah, it was, everyone's just like, and meanwhile, I was told secondhand, because it was at the second crown event where I was knighted. And I was told during Knights Council that, all the fighters out of 3M were going like, yeah, there's this left-hander who came up from the mist, and he's just been just walking all over us. And they said, well, what's his name? I said, Berek von Longus. I was like, really? We thought he quit. They're all shows pride. Says, well, let's just watch and see how well he does at this crown tournament and then decide what to do. And I think that was a crown tournament where there were 3 Ontarians in the finals. It was the last one before we would cap off. Steingrim Stellari and Manfred were obviously the big guns at the time. They were in the finals, and I think I came in very, very last third place. And so the attitude was, well, no doubt about it, it will be an Ontarian signing the papers when we cab off to the west. And and this also came at a time where the West Kingdom tradition of bringing up peers was no different than how we would bring up Joms or Goots, where this predated vigils, this predated any heads up. It was pretty much, they would just pull you out of the crowd and just say, the peerage has decided, we decided to make you a peer, do you accept or not? And very fast. And in fact, that one evening there were 3 knights made.
He knew, didn't tell me, and I was pregnant.
I was
Can you imagine when he was called up to be knighted? That
I really wasn't focused and thinking about things. It's just more like, oh my God, they're going to knight me here now. What happened? And it was the night where we, the 3 big personalities at the time. Was the first one brought up was Gerhard Kendall. He was knighted, and of course the crowd goes nuts. The second one was a local favorite out of Courteval, Garrick the Silent, and of course the populace goes wild. And I was the third. They called me up, and all you heard was just a little clutch of Misty and yay! No one was who I was.
Well, yeah, 3 Mountains did.
Yeah, 3 Mountains, but just the amount of cheering was just more like, okay, I've got a lot of work to be done. But yeah, sadly, Lisa's right that I was so overwhelmed. I said, maybe I should tell my wife that this is going to happen, because it just happened so fast. And again, this predated, we will put you on visual, whatever. It was just like, boom, here's your belt, here's your chain, here's your spurs, go have fun.
Was your knight there for it?
Yes, he was. He came up and says like, Berek, we're going to make you a knight. It's like, do you support this? Well, yes. And it's like, okay, I'll accept. And again, when you're brand new to fighting and you realize that, oh my God, I didn't realize I was being watched again. Because once I left the Bay Area, it's like, well, no one knows who I am. I'll just keep fighting because I'm really enjoying it, not realizing that 3M Knights were all like, this guy's walking all over us. Who is he?
So did you get regalia that you still have today, or do you remember?
Belt that I was given, I gave on to my first squire who became a knight. What's Adric's full name?
Adric, I can't remember his
Oh
full name.
God, sorry,
Adric.
Oh golly. Anyway, my chain, which was the traditional West Kingdom. It looks like it came off of a lampshade.
It did. It was lamp chain from the hardware store.
Hardware store that came from my night. I gave that. I wonder who I gave that to.
Yeah, you gave it to somebody.
Right, and I'm not sure what happened to this. I don't think I got spurs, but it all got passed. Again, we're talking, and I'll be brutally honest here, 39 years.
Next year will be his 40th
40th anniversary of his night. Yes.
Yeah, the next spring, March maybe.
June Crown. It would have been
June
Crown 2021.
So we went down to Purgatorio, and that's where we got sucked into Antir, really, because we'd still, we were playing with Three Mountains and hanging out with them. Hadn't gone to a lot of events because I was pregnant. We were trying to build this kit. We built a little pavilion, right? And thinking we were from California, so this kind of roof is going to work, right?
Nice and shallow, of course.
So we were just kind of building ourselves up and didn't travel, and still hadn't gotten kind of the idea that you travel a lot. I mean, you drive a long ways in Antir. And then the first one, I know it was a Cornet. It was like, it's raining. I'm not going to go camp in the rain. Why would you do that? But being pregnant was the excuse for that one. And so we went to Purgatorio, and all of a sudden, all these people from Antir, Purgatorio, it was the coronation for Steinberg.
Oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. Oh, yes.
Some long ago Ontarians, Mistress Asala Talarion and Mistress Linda Farover, and all these people were down. There was like this whole contingent of Madrona people. And they said, you need to start working. You need to start, we're going to have this. And when you come up to whatever our first crown was for the 12th night, was it September?
September.
Yeah. You're going to come, we're going to feed you, you're going to work with us, and hey, you can do these things, hey, you should do this, you should do that. And I felt like, wow, they're expecting us to do something. But I think if they hadn't done that, we never would have gotten involved. And we were at that point where we were new, we were looking kind of for a new group and kind of finding more that the SA was important to us. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And we just, I don't know, Berek became games master, and I started working on, I can't remember when it was, between the two kids, I think somewhere.
Wooden spoon.
The Guild of the Black Kettle, which was a cooking guild. I don't know if anybody remembers, but back in the day, Jean-Louis had built this fantastic, and even before he had the trailer, we were just like cooking off our stoves. We used to do an Antir breakfast on Sunday mornings, just, very nominal fee, and we'd cook pancakes and oatmeal and coffee, and it was just the people that liked to cook. It was a lot of Madrona people, and I saw Liesel of Cumbria and people out of Three Mountains that were pretty active too. So that's kind of how I got involved. I got involved in the cooking end. And then
you still love to cook at events.
I do. I kind of got to a point where I was starting to cook for so many people that it wasn't becoming fun anymore. And when you're cooking for like 30 people or 40 people, it's really hard to keep up the medieval aspect of it and move more towards the seal and meal bags, which we still do. But we've really started paring back with our kind of SCA family and really enjoy the whole bit. And really the war is the only time it all comes out. So, but yeah, so we just started, I don't know, just working on everything. And the first event we autocrated, we got involved in the beginning of the West Antir Wars when they were the Gerhard Wars. They were actually held in Corvallis a couple times. And I know I worked gate one of them, and I did something else with one of them. And then somehow, I don't know why, they asked us to autocrat it, and we needed to move. And so we started hunting for sites. And if anybody remembers the Zumwalt Park site down in Eugene, we actually were the ones that got that, and had to go into the county and explain who we are, and went out and did cleanup of, it was a nasty, nasty park, right?
We got a lot of help from Adiantum.
Yeah, Adiantum helped. I mean, there were a lot of people that helped clean that up. We took trailer loads of stuff out of there. And the first years were pretty bad because we were pretty much camping on blackberry bushes. Like, we got a neighbor to come in and bale it all up for us and cut it down, but the kids had come in and like ridden motorcycles all through it. And so the land, I'm surprised nobody broke their legs there. The land was choppy. It was pretty bad, but we autocrated 2 or 3 wars there. And then they just started using it all the time. And then the neighbors were like, well, now you're using it all the time. And now that you've done all the improvements, the park's nice. So I'm not sure what we want, but I think that Adiantum finally had to leave there. So yeah, that was that was fun. It was just different. I was telling somebody about, bookkeeping back then in Gayton, what it was like. And, perhaps the accounting things were a little bit different. Like, there were no bank runs in the middle of the event. There was, none of this. So, yeah, I don't like to talk about that too much, because anybody that's like in any position of power nowadays or money just cringes. But, yeah.
Were you guys German from the beginning? And if so, what was the
Actually, so Long and Tall, we just picked that name. So people always want to know what our story of our names are. Back in the 70s, there wasn't a whole lot of having to prove anything. Liesel's there, and I don't know why, I just like that name. And Berek got it out of a book, which is kind of, we've had Elizabeth, Countess E, try and document it, and she has kind of documented it for us. But Long and Tall was a city I lived in for a summer and worked when I was in college. I went over and kind of like a little work study program, and I really liked it. I thought, oh, let's be Swiss. So we were Swiss, and I think and then we never actually ever planned to be Landsknecht until Berek won that first crown, and someone said, oh, they just assumed we were German, said, you should go Landsknecht. It would be so different. And it was the infamous blue and orange explosion. But I always thought it was kind of funny because the Swiss and the Landsknecht didn't necessarily get along.
I think I might have a picture of that blue and orange explosion. So let me see.
Did you guys have somebody that sewed for you that first reign?
Yeah, Caressa.
Caressa Thokbiala, yes.
Yeah, Mistress Caressa.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. She, we bought like huge bolts of that fabric, and she sewed our outfits. That's the Flute Viga right there in between us. She was our herald. That's our day. We were so hot at that event. It was
sticky hot
in Yelm, with like 2 trees on the whole site, and it must have been 90 degrees. We were dying. So we pretty much stripped down the next day. Mm-hmm. And that throne was Johannes's throne. So when Berek won that crown, Johannes was
4.5?
No, he was a little over 2, and Kyle, our youngest, Kai, was 6 months old. So that was fun. But John Louis built that little throne for Evan, for Johannes, and he loved it. He loved it. And he had Steingrim I don't know if Steingrim remembers this. He had Steingrim wrapped around his finger. Steingrim was so great with him. And one day he wanted his throne moved, and he just walks up to Steingrim and he goes, come with me, and walks over to the chair and points it, and he goes, bring it. Right? And just ordered Steingrim to carry his throne. And Steingrim was so sweet.
I thought I had like a picture of you guys in the blue and orange, but maybe not.
I think it's covered up by, yeah, that was from.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but the underground was polyester, and it was killing me. I was dying. Yeah, it was quite the contrast. And then our retinue all bought the same fabric, basically Foggy Caressa of Pastiche got enough fabric for everybody that wanted to make it. So there's like a whole sea of blue and orange, and other people who, like the costumers who wanted to try something different, they all came that way too. So
fun.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting. We did a grand slam on our coronation day. I don't know. We made one of every pair, including the master.
Wow.
It was Master Grendel,
Sir Dion de Montel,
Master Jean-Louis for a laurel, and Mistress Elaine Greybeard for a pelican. And I've never regretted doing any of those, ever. No. I was probably new enough and had never been in around retinue enough to realize that probably making peers of people that are all on your retinue look great. But as I told people, I was like, and that back then there was like no limit on, it was like a 2.5 hour Pell and Laurel meeting. And so I felt quite like these people were very supportive, but we've always been really proud of the fact that.
Well, 2 of them are Lions of Untier.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, it was kind of cool.
Those are some good people.
So who did you fight in your crown that you won, Berek?
Was Gowanus guy?
Yes, I think it was or no, was it Steingrim? No. It was either Steingrim. Now I'm blanking. God, we're old. The brain goes. Maybe, I think it was Steingrim, because it was in three mountains and it was a little like they were really torn. They didn't know what to do. We had people coming up going, what do we do? We love both, but we've been with Steingrim. So yeah, I think it was Steingrim. I think it was Steingrim. And maybe Scalanis was in the third of that. So
Fun.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then you guys, shortly after you reigned, both received your pelicans or were recognized as pelicans, right?
She got hers first.
I got my pelican from Arthur and Melissa, who's now Duke Eric.
It was like 80, 81.
I think so. Yeah. I think so.
And I got mine about 5 years later from Jarl Dak and Nu De Do Lao. In fact, and I was autocrating the West Ontario War.
That's right.
And there was, I think they just wanted to make it a big surprise because the Queen, Nu De Do Lao was very like, go talk to this person, go talk to this person. And there was something about the way she presented it. It's like, something's going on here. She says, talk to the king, ask the king when he's ready to do this. And there's a, fight going on. There was a whole call. I asked the marshals, could I quickly rush on the field? And the king is kind of underneath the scrum and says, Your Majesty, do you want court in 30 minutes? And Dak is like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. Run back, go to the queen and says, Your Majesty, the king says, yes, 30 minutes. She was all very good. And says, she made some little hint like, and you might want to change clothes. And it's like, okay, because I was just drenched in sweat. But they were, I think the king and queen were more happier for it than for receiving me, because I was just busy being the war autocrat. And it's just like, there's just too much going on. There's been an injury on the field. We're trying to keep things going. We don't know what's going on. And everyone else like, you're doing great as an autocrat. So yeah.
So yeah.
And when Lao tells you to do something, she had this persona that she just stayed in when she's amazing.
Exactly, right. Just the way she carries herself when she's being royalty formal. It's just like, all right, something important is happening here. I better pay very good attention to it when we carry out what she wants us to do.
That's awesome. Oh.
Let's say, yeah, and even with my pelican, I think I had a hint because a pelican took me aside at a party and talked to me a little bit. But even back then, it was no, do you want to go vigil? Do you want to do anything? It was just someone tells you to bring nice clothes and you're like, oh, maybe something's going to happen.
Thumbs up.
I was expecting something. So they're probably going to give me a king's favor or something like that, and didn't realize this. Oh, wait, this is a pelican thing going on here. But yeah, it was very, and for me, very impressive.
So when you guys reigned, did you guys create any awards or traditions or anything like that?
Did we do?
Yes, we made the Lions Club and gave Ula the very first one when she was a little girl.
Aw,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, we were there were other people that had children, like Oak had children, or Einar, whatever it goes by now, had children too, but children really weren't part of the SCA. It was still very much a young person's deal. And so they were kind of like, they were tolerated. And maybe if your child was teething, not even tolerated. There just wasn't anything. And we were lucky enough to come into a group with Morag and Kate and Dublin O'Gwyn. Our first kids were all kind of born at the same time. And so we kind of made our own little deal and worked, took care of the kids, but there was nothing. It was like, keep your kids out of the way kind of thing. And so we got to the point where any toy maker that had something new, they, Ed and Ilaria made these beautiful little toys. They'd always bring us one and say, yeah, we'll order it. And we went through a period of where these people were making these gorgeous little boffer helms for kids. I guess, I'm sorry, we don't do that anymore, but little closed cell foam helms and swords. And so our kids had it all. They had their own little armor bags. They had all this stuff because we pretty much had to make the fun for them. So I think when we came that first time, we wanted to do something for them. And then when we were Prince and Princess of the Summits, we did a children's award down there. But down there we did on our coronation days, investiture. We did these little games for kids called the Lands Connect Olympics. and it was training up to be a Lance Connect. And so it was so funny. The kid, and actually the adults got into it too. But we had gone to the Goodwill and bought old sweats, and we just ripped them up to look like Lance Connect. Because my child called them when he was little tangly pants, because he could never get them on right. So we got these little tops and bottoms that they had to. The first thing they had to do was the premise was they had to get a cup of beer or water to the fighters at the other end end. And so they had to first put on these outfits and get those on, and then they carried these water, and they jumped over hay bales, like the castle. We had little catapults set up where they had to show they could knock it down. We had like 4 or 5 stations, but the absolute most favorite one, and it got better every year, was looting the bodies. Yeah, we taught kids really well. So we had these little chocolate coins printed with our names on them. And we tucked them in around the bodies of fighters, and they just laid there dead, and the kids went on. And so by the second time we did it, the fighters decided they wanted to be a little more active, so they were not maybe quite dead all the time, and started attacking the kids and fighting them. And so, we just thought it was important. By the time we were in the summits, there were a lot more things for kids, but for us, making sure that kids are involved and having something to do has always been kind of important, because and a part of the reason our kids didn't love the SCA, and we actually did leave for a while, for us, family is much more important. And we knew there was a time, they missed some things. We did a lot of traveling when our kids, we went to events all the time. And so we decided if there was at some point they joined something, we would do the same for them, which came about in middle school, high school. We actually took a break, and our oldest son played roller hockey, and our youngest son was skiing. So we did a lot of traveling with that. And I don't know, it was just important to us that they knew that, because, but it was just never their thing. And I think, in fact, when Johannes came back, like when he turned 18 or 19, he stuck his toes into it again. He goes, this just makes me mad, seeing all these things they have. It was so much fun for them, and there was none of this for us.
Aww.
But the groups found themselves. There was like Ula and a bunch of kids. But without organized things, it was always a little scary. So, yeah.
Raising kids in the SCA is hard, even now with stuff. It's hard.
It is, and it's a big deal for them. Our youngest one, it was really never his thing. It got to the point that we had to bribe him with a new game, a handheld game that he could bring, and we had to tell him he couldn't stay in the tent. He couldn't come out of the tent unless he would wear costume. He goes, okay, I'll stay in the tent. Where then we're like, well, you can't, because it's like 150 degrees. You do get to come out and play. But when they were young, though, when Johannes was like one of the first babies of people that were really active, and so I had everybody wanting to take care of him. It was great. By the time Kyle came along, other people had children, so they still were very nice and very, it was wonderful, but the novelty had worn off. And so
but it's still, you guys reigned with 2 tiny kids.
Yeah.
That's wow. That's hard.
I had to leave court once to go nurse. But other than that, it was, they were pretty good kids.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about kind of that word I can't say right now. Philosophical peerage stuff. What do you think your greatest responsibility is as a Knight Pelican peer, royal peer? And
being a good role model. As Liesel mentioned, when we first joined the SCA, we were like brand new, didn't know anything. And so naturally you're going to want to look and see, well, who are the people they're admiring? Who are the people they're looking up to? And this is a value that was passed on to from my Knight, Earl Sir Thomas the Incomplete, is that you were a role model. And when Lisa and I reigned as king and queen, it became very obvious, you are a role model. To this day, there are people who still will tell us, you were my first king and queen. And so that says a lot by saying, did we have an influence on you? Did we make you want to stay with the organization or leave the organization? Later on, as I had an opportunity when I was serving on the board of directors for the SCA, and being even as a being Kingdom Earl Marshal, I would constantly see the same thing played over and over again. are you a good role model? Branches thrive or die if they don't have peers, who you can look up to. And that, I think, is the key thing with this organization, is that we can no matter where our station is in the SCA, we all have to remember we are role models to each other, to the brand new newest person wearing a simple tea tunic, to even being a role model for the crusty old peer. This is what keeps us going, and this is what makes our organization special, being that role model,
lifting each other up.
Yeah.
Same for you, Liesel?
Yeah, I think so. And you guys are going to laugh, and people really laugh at me, Bill, although people who know me know this. It's really hard for me, and being queen and princess was hard because I'm actually, unless I know people really well, I'm really shy.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for me to talk to people I don't know. So that, I had to throw myself out there. But I felt it was important. And again, I always kind of thought, this is a game. We do this. We have a real life. This is a game. It's important. But when people would come up and say things like, oh, I remember you here. Like we actually, when we were king and queen, we did the very first on-tier crown in Avicall. There was a big bus that drove up to Avicall with all these Ontarians, central Ontarians, I guess, at that point. And drove into Avicall, and I was terrified to walk around because I didn't know these people. I didn't know what they were going to think. And so I just kind of talked, and I'm actually pretty quiet if I don't have, a lot or have something. I used to do some drinking just because that would be the only way I could talk to people I didn't know. And people come back, 20 years later and talked about that. And I'm like, wow, I think you don't realize how much people recognize. And I think that's where you have to be really careful. And we get, we have our little families and we have our camps, and you might say something that your family totally gets, but if somebody walking by hears it, they don't get what you're talking about, or that it's a joke, or, and so that's always scary to me. And I think as I've grown older and more kind of reflective, I'm like, ooh, yeah, it's a little scary, but we're all human, and it is I went through a whole time. It's like, I think after I got my Pelican, I felt really bad. Like people were watching me. And if I was even sitting in my camp and not working, they were like, well, why is she a Pelican? She's not out of gate. She's not out of here. And I realized, it took a while to get over that, but we all work in different ways. Don't know how that is. But I don't know. And I know that Berek's we haven't taken a lot of squires. He hasn't taken. When you become a squire in Long and Tall, it's pretty much like a family adoption. I mean, it's not, it's a pretty big thing. And so I've always, people have always wondered why I didn't take apprentices or proteges, excuse me. And it was like, I just felt like as a lady, like a countess wouldn't take a protege to teach them something. You would take in younger people, or the squires' wives or something. It was always kind of that way. You come into our household, you camp with us, and we do it together, and you kind of learn by being there. And so I've actually had a person tell me that they just felt like I was their unofficial peer, because that was a role that we had, and we kind of brought them up in the SCA, so to speak, and then they move on into their own households, which I think
your household and the way that you mentor people is one of your superpowers. You guys are really good at helping people become very well-rounded SCA participants. And walking into your camp is always, even your new people are well turned out and they know what's going on, and you guys are really good at that.
Thank you. Thank you. People do need to know, though, because I know that they see, are in camp, they're like, oh my gosh, you're not going to let anybody in that doesn't look good. They have to understand, we've been in the SCA for close to over 40 years. And we started out with my family's old Coleman tent. Then we moved to the blue tarp tents. There was a time in Ontario that if you had a blue tarp with walls, that was pretty classy. So my family camped in a large blue tarp tent for many, many years. I'll never forget Dak coming over and standing up. Dak, the epitome, who had one of the very first period camps that, he was showing off. He's kind of always been my idol. And he came over and was just standing in my tent. I'm like, I'm so embarrassed, Dak. I'm so embarrassed that you're standing in my blue tarp. But it's what we could afford. We were a young family. I stayed home with my children, and so we slowly moved up to what we have now.
Yeah.
And it's not. Some people come in overnight and have that, but for us, we lend tents. We have people camp in the back and come kind of live in our encampment to see what they like, and it's kind of fun. Although now that we're older, it's like, oh my gosh, it takes us 4 hours to set up this camp.
It's so much work.
Yeah. I don't know. Trying to pass them off to the children and the family, I guess.
You guys do though. You facilitate this this sense of loyalty with your people too, and continuity, I guess is the right word. It is. I was going to say the same thing. It's sort of a superpower that you two have, and what you've created with Camp Trouble too is just pretty cool.
Thanks. Yeah, it's gotten a little big, but you guys, I don't think people know what the origin of Camp Trouble was. It's hilarious. So
Okay,
Frontier West is one of my favorite events, and I like to work on it a lot. I've always worked on the land part of it. I loved, and I wanted, we were really into the ambience. Obviously, when you camp with Bain, Sir Bain, ambience is a big deal. So we really worked to do lots of things. But the first time I worked on land, I actually was assisting Mistress Kalja, and what's her name? I can't remember Rachel's SCA name out of the West. Totally blanking. Isabella, thank you. She was the autocrat. And so, as always, when it's kind of a new area and people are coming in, there's some fraughtness. And Isabella was just walking back to her camp, and she's so calm. She's like, my camp is just going to be so peaceful and calm that they come in upset. The peace is just going to overwhelm them. And Culture and I were just tired. We've been walking. I said, well, not down here. We're going to be trouble. They come down here and it's Camp Trouble. And if they give us trouble, well, we'll be nice. And so actually it stuck and we became Camp Trouble. It was just, if Isabella was having issues with people, she could send them down to Trouble, where they would have to come and deal with land issues. So that was actually kind of how it started, and it just stayed. And it really was just kind of an on-tier war camp, because we camp much smaller when we're doing other things.
And do you guys get kind of basically the same area of land every time?
Yeah, when you're in charge of land, sometimes you get to pick your spot. And then also, again, so yeah, for the first time, I really did land for 4 or 5 years, I think, and if it was the West, I would assist the West person. So we always got, Dayla and us kind of took that corner because we often did the lands together. Yeah. And then Bain, had his cathedral and all his stuff, and we tried to be really period in the front, and they liked it, and that just kind of became where we always were. So, yeah.
Awesome.
What else?
So what you guys have, granted you had a break with the kids, but what has kept you motivated to stay active and to continue to give so much of your energy and time to the SCA over 40 years?
Friendships. What is obviously being in any organization for as long as we have, you have a lot of friendships stretch over the years. Friends who we still love it when we see friends from down in the West who I haven't seen for 20, 30 years, but my gosh, we still remember each other. All the people that we've met from up and down the I-5 corridor. And so we'll take a break, but the idea of wanting to come back to be with friends who all have common interests in the arts and sciences and the fighting of Middle Ages and Renaissance. That's what always brings us back. Just that friendship. There are people who I would who I consider close friends, who I said, my gosh, this is the only opportunity we have to see each other. We got to go to these events and watch. So, again, old friendships, we're all tied together in this.
I think that's mostly it. I think when we came back the second time after our kids, so we took a pretty good 4 to 6 year break through middle school and high school. And then we decided to come back into it. It was really interesting because it was a whole new generation of SCA. And I think that's when you guys were active in college and we had no idea who any of these people were and they had no idea who we were. So it was kind of funny to come back in, but we kind of decided we were going to come back in with a different attitude because I have to honestly say it's hard and you guys are really active. Sometimes you can be too active in the SCA and too involved and you know, the family might suffer a little bit or like the kids, just like we said, we realized that we needed for our family to stop and take a break. And I know we had to make some other decisions about fighting for Crown, you know, more because one of, you know, it just wasn't a good choice with one of our little kids. And so, I don't know, that's the point. When we came back, we kind of decided that we were going to go to really work to be more period and kind of more, I don't know, meaningful, but that sounds so PC, but thoughtful in what we work on and how we do it, I think, rather than trying to do all of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I have been taking a break for a while and we had just kind of started to, the kids wanted to come back. And so we're kind of going through that same thing of, you know, where do we want to spend our energy? What really brings us joy? And it's an interesting exercise to go through.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, and I think I've been having fun. I burn out. I think just because I'm older, you know, getting ready for events is harder, but we have a really good group of people and we share things and work. But I get excited. I kind of missed the war this year.
Yeah,
it was hard only because it's just where we see so many people that we don't get to see. But and then actually being a teacher makes it hard because we're not able to go to as many of the Crown events sometimes when they're, you know, I can't take school off on a Friday to go up to Canada or something. So a lot of the events, it's like, oh, things are going well and I'm not scheduled into meetings. I can take a day off and come. So
yeah,
when we do go, we really try to have a good time and, you know, have as much fun.
And make the most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were trying to get into the habit of, because, you know, again, wear and tear on a fighter body, you know, just starts to stack up, that we said, okay, let's see if we can pack the absolute minimum for Crown events. Just what do we absolutely have to have, so I'm not spending 4 hours packing a trailer and, you know, two of those 4 hours, 2 hours and just sitting there trying to recover. But then for the big event, like let's say Sport of Kings or West Ontario War, where we're there for at least 4 or 5 nights, then, you know, we'll bring everything, and I hope we get the squires to help me load it.
We have fantastic squires in household. They do more than we do now, so yes. It's great. In fact, it's kind of funny because Eric's like, tell us the funny thing when they all start drinking at night at events. Tell us the stories, Grandpa Berek. Tell us the stories. Right? Yeah, Olin says that, but other people are starting to do it. Like his squire, Rufus, the other day was like, we need to hear these stories. Nobody's telling. We're like, everybody knows the stories. And he goes, no, tell us one. And so this is weird. It was Montford and Morag were the first king and queen of Ontario. And Montford had a penchant for burnt toast and very plain eating, and he loved chili dogs. So I remember his retinue, it was like a solitarian and some other people marching up in court, and they'd had this whole presentation of chili dogs, and they sang this song as in chant, right? C is for the C in chili dogs. H is for the H in chili. And they just did this quietly marching the whole way, sounding medieval, and presented him with chili dogs. And he was so happy. But I mean, it's stories like that. You think, God, it was crazy back then, but nobody remembers that, I think, or the old people do. But
right. I think the argument is that we've got so much verbal history that no one's writing it down. I go, well, what are all the little vignettes that people say, yes, that was uniquely Ontarian, or yes, that's something that happened during so-and-so's reign, and everyone talked about it for months afterwards. And it's like, but no one from that who wasn't in that generation remembers it, so they kind of lose that connection over, you know, what happened. And so, you know, so again, having a new generation saying, well, tell us what, you know, Ontario's been a kingdom for, you know, for so long. Surely there's more fun history than what we get out of the records. And so there's always, you know, trying to encourage, quote unquote, us old peers by saying, well, this is what happened, you know, when so and so was king at the war, or this is what happened when so-and-so was queen at Arts and Sciences. But again, these are some of the, the interesting stories that we if we can find and start telling again.
Oh, and back from I think it was the first West Ontario War, we were kind of trying to revive the Gerhardt War and turn it to West Ontario. So it was the very first one we done at Zoom. We had one person from the West come up, Sir William the Lucky, and he held the field. And we did the one fight against the West, and then it turned into just, there was a lot of Ontarians there, but things like that were pretty funny. The one-man Western War, or there's.
So was it Gerhard Kendall and Gerhard
von Nordflammen?
Gerhard von Nordflammen and Gerhard von Kendall, because Gerhard von Nordflammen came from Westermark in the Bay Area, and so that was the joke between them. And then Gerhard von Nordflammen actually moved to Lionsgate, so it couldn't be the Gerhard word anymore. That would look too good. So it became the West Ontario War.
But it's mostly just trying to get the momentum going. Is that here, there was, yes, you had, West Caid War, you had Estrella, but once Ontario split off, there was no big exciting on, now we can have an interkingdom war. It's just like, well, a lack of where to have it, it's too far to drive. And so, there are people who says we've got to get the momentum going. That's why the first two or three were like, well, let's just call it Gerhard. And because of, who doesn't know Baron Gerhard Kendall, who doesn't know Gerhard von Nordflammen? If we get them engaged in it, then we could say, now we're going to have an official West Ontario War.
Yeah.
So you guys were really involved in getting that going and making it what it is.
The closest we were just like helping to organize a site.
No, in the Gerhard War, we just worked on site because when they happened to be in this area. But when we started the actual West Ontario War, we autocrated the first few. There was one we had to, something came up and we had to pass it on, and Vita took over for us. I think it's something family came up and we had to go down to the Bay Area over that weekend. I can't remember what it was, but it was pretty important. So
has it always switched back and forth?
Pardon? Has
it always switched back and forth?
No, it was pretty much always up in Ontario. I think the farthest south it ever went was Wairika, down that site. So it was usually up here. I think it went into, it went to Klamath Falls. Klamath Falls, like that. Yeah, we didn't do it in Klamath Falls. I think that was after we'd done the first one.
That's how we did the first one.
Then it moved down. They tried to, more people got involved and they moved it farther south to see if they could get more Westies to come.
Because it used to actually physically, we have a beautiful permanent site that we use a lot now, but it used to be in California and then up here. Yes. Always kind of close to the border, but it used to switch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where Wairika, was a perfect spot. There was a small branch there. There was a site. Yes, there was a green portion where we could all camp. There was the dry, dusty portion where we can have the war. It's just that around July, Wairika gets really, really hot. And, I remember there was one West Ontario War when I was Kingdom Earl Marshal where we come rolling up and people would set up their tents and just flop on the ground. It's just too hot to do anything. And I'm sitting here nervous as Kingdom Earl Marshal. It's like, oh my God, we're going to have heat problems and all this. And of course, not realizing that the West Kingdom trains in weather like this. And so they would have no problem. And all the Ontarians is like, we're pushing ourselves too hard. We really got to take a break. We got to drink. But yeah, there was either Wairika or we bring it a little bit north. But then when we finally, it took a while before we finally, isolated where we have something in Gold Beach, which is nice and cool. Yeah, it's easy. Both sides can get to it. We know the property owner, so hopefully there's no problems in years now on being able to be out there and slowly improving the site, like bringing in more water and improving the facility. So yeah, it's developed nicely.
I remember one Wairika event. Sorry, I was really getting into cooking. I said, I want to. I don't do anything at the war anyway, right? It's going to be boring, so I'm going to cook the whole time period. Like I didn't even bring my camp stove, saying I'm going to cook the whole time period, and not realizing how hot Wairika gets. And so I was basically on a fire from 6 a.m. to 8, and I was raging. I was not pretty by the end of Saturday night, and nice to be around. And it really made me think about how much work these people really did. That's all you did all day long was do that. You weren't out shopping with your friends and hanging out and having a drink, you were over the fire or washing dishes. So that's kind of one of the first times when I tried to do everything, period, without a lot of really period nice cookware. So.
Yeah, I was probably out in the field all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that
We eat out of the cooler.
Yeah. Our kids were so angry because there was that lake there and we wouldn't let them touch it, right? Because it had the tailings, it's mining strippers. So yeah, that was a hard site for them to be at. Yeah, even they have stories, you know, they have fun stories. I mean, they remember fun things about the SCA and people and things that had happened. And, you know, being on retinues was one of the most fun for me because you just get to meet so many people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of you're working, but it's just behind the scenes and you see things and you meet people. And that's how I met quite a few people. That
is the flip side of that true too, when you're reigning as queen or princess, where you get to meet a whole bunch of new people through your retinue?
Yes.
Yes, bringing in new people on the retinues. Although, you know, one of our friends, when we literally the first time Berek won crown, someone said to us, now you need to remember that the friends that you had before you came here this weekend are the ones that are going to be your friends when you step down. And I thought that was like, oh, okay. And it's true. I mean, you do meet a lot of really cool people, but then there's also that group of people that are, you know, kind of on to the next one. I remember that because we stepped down in Wastekeep in a little tiny place. It was 12th night in Wastekeep, and it was a pretty small hall. And I had this dress with a beautiful train on it. You know, of course, up until we stepped down, I was walking around and people would just clear the way, right? And this is kind of like just kind of the epitome of what it's like to step down sometimes. You kind of have to get back in that mindset. And I swear to God, the minute we walked off and, you know, did the cheer, my dress was being pulled back all the time.
Oh, no.
It wasn't on purpose, but it's just kind of funny. You lose that presence. And I've talked about that. I mean, I think a lot of what I've talked about with younger people, fighters and, you know, and their consorts is kind of some realities of what it's like. And, you know, how it feels when someone's fighting for you. And I always talked about, especially when I was pregnant, because Berek was in the semifinals when I was pregnant with Kyle, with Evan, who that was our first 12th night. And my first son was due literally on the day that Ontario 12th night was supposed to happen in Lionsgate. And Berek got into the semifinals. And so that would have, yeah, like my doctor said, you can't go to Canada. What are you talking about? But he ended up being born on Janeltis's birthday. So I always thought that was kind of cool, right? And he was actually the first true born citizen of the Kingdom of Ontario. Not principality, but actual kingdom.
That's really cool.
Yeah. But, you know, little things like that you kind of forget about, and they're kind of funny and meaningful to the family. But I don't know. I've totally lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. That's just
You're talking about stepping down and what it's
stepping down and what it's like, and especially pregnant. Like I talked to women. I said people get mad at you because sometimes they see the consort crying, or you know, kind of having to calm down, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how nasty! She's mad he didn't win." I said, "Look, you guys." When fighters are fighting, they have a lot of adrenaline, right? Where's that adrenaline going? It's going into their fight. They're losing that adrenaline. Yeah. Where's your adrenaline going? How do women release a lot of times? So not everybody, and it might not be true for everybody, but I had a lot of women go, thank you. Nobody ever, you know, I felt so bad. I didn't know what was going on. And especially when you're pregnant, sometimes you have like contractions or, you know, depending on how long you're, just from that buildup of adrenaline. And because I'm kind of like the soccer mom consort. So I really followed everything. And, you know, those kinds of things I think that don't get shared a lot that are important to understand, that you support your fighter, but there's, you know, there's physical things going on when you're watching this match and your guy's almost either there or not there, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah, I don't get that with Mark, but watching my sister fight in Crown, that one Crown that you did like really, really well at.
Yeah.
I wasn't her consort, but I was so intent on watching her, and when she finally went out, I had to go take a walk because I was ugly crying.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until you just said that's what it was. It was all that adrenaline I had from just putting all that energy behind her. So thank you for that, because I didn't know what that was.
It's not really about being disappointed. It's about investing yourself in your fighter or whatever, and wanting them to do well, and they can lose and still do well, and you can cry because you're happy that they had such a good day.
Right. You can be disappointed because, you know they want something really bad, whether it's a crown, they worked so hard. You guys, you fighters work so hard, so you can be disappointed for them. But I was never disappointed that we didn't win.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's the difference. And I think that's hard. Sometimes I think, like when we first came to Ontier and we went to Eagles, which was pretty much the giant event, right? People came from the West. All of Ontier it was like one big party. We were small enough where there was there, and that kind of stuff got shared. And I think sometimes what we've lost with growing so much and so fast, that we're not sharing that kind of information, right? And people go through thinking, wow, I must be kind of mean being, mad, or that woman is, wow, she's crying because that's not nice. He fought his best. And so I think those kinds of things are important to share with people coming in.
How do you think we could share them better? I mean, I'm just like sort of at a loss of like how to recreate sort of a more of a community where we just sort of sit and hang out and talk. Like I keep wanting like somebody to like make their coronation a big picnic. Where we all just sit and have a picnic and they step up and and we can all talk. But I don't know.
I think that's what I missed most. I think and it's not a put down on anybody, and I think it's great just because we have so many more resources now, and people literally aren't. I mean, we used to have to plan event sites like, oh, is so-and-so's car going to be able to get up that hill? Like, a major Ontarian. I don't think their car will get in and out of here, so we can't have this site. But, it used to be a lot more simple. I mean, if you won crown, you had a step-up outfit. That was it. There was not new clothes. I mean, we had to make clothes because we had crummy clothes, but there wasn't a new step down. And we got flack because I made Berek promise me when we stepped up as king and queen that if I went Lands Connect, we would get to step down Renaissance, because that was I was really into that, idealized romantic vision of it. And so we did have a second, we were the first people in Ontario to actually have a different step down outfit, and we got some flack. Like, are you trying to show up the new king and queen, who looked absolutely wonderful? So there's no way we could have ever shown them up because they looked stupendous. But it was kind of, when now I see where, it's, people are sewing their little hands off. And I don't think that's bad, because I think that the skill's there and it's wonderful, but it's just, it's such a change, I think.
But there has been an escalation, and not just with reigning. I mean, with vigils and things where that's so big and they're so elaborate, and that's great, but then there's this expectation. And I think if we could just get back to sort of the roots of what like we're supposed to be talking to each other and passing on knowledge, and it's not really about who has the most food and who has the coolest tent or whatever for the vigil. I just there's so much pressure, I think.
I think so. I think the things that have been done are wonderful, and I'm amazed at some of the things, but I wonder if it's who has the next best one. I'd almost be afraid to be put on vigil nowadays. But
or when you have one of your people get put on vigil, and it's like, okay, this is going to be hugely expensive and time consuming.
And you love them and their family, so you want to do it, but it does, and I don't know that Berek's any less of a knight or a pelican, or I'm less of a pelican for not having a giant vigil.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have changed me at all.
Mm-mm.
I actually have a hard time going in and talking at vigils even. I mean, I have a standard question I ask all the nights.
I don't go to vigils. Yeah. I talk to the person outside of the vigil, like before they go into the vigil, or I'll email with them if it's somebody that is really important to me. But I don't like the crowds. I don't like the how drunk it gets out, and I'm usually with my kids.
Yeah.
And so it's not my thing.
I write in the book. I was talking to this guy from Atenvelt last week, and he said he always tells people, I don't do vigils. If I wanted to tell you something or you needed to know something, I've told you by now. And so don't take offense that I won't be there. And I'm like, I am stealing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And it's not to disrespect anybody that's done, like you said, there's been some wonderful things, but it has kind of escalated everything. And I can't imagine what it must cost to rain right now, with all the clothing and I don't know. But I love seeing the work that people do. I mean, it's amazing to see some of the beautiful clothing.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of part of the balance. I mean, there are food people who love making period food for vigils, and I think that totally should be celebrated. And same, I mean, clearly I like sewing for Rains.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work.
I mean, if that's what you love and that people want to do that, I think it's great. I just, Berek and I was just talking of you'd always tell him his nights. I mean, his squires, if you ever night, I'm going to tell him to do it on the field. And they're like, oh, no.
No more big weddings.
Yeah. Elopement. That's the way to go. You save a lot of money. No.
Well, I mean, and you want somebody to have the vigil that they want to have. Yeah. I feel like maybe we shouldn't put expectations on people to feel like they have to want something elaborate if they don't. If they actually want to enjoy the people at the party and not sit in a tent by themselves and, listen to advice that may or may not be well thought out. Because I feel like a lot of people go into vigils and they just give advice, but they're just giving it because they're expected to, and it's not really something that's all that important
or personalized.
Yeah, I don't know. Something I think about.
I agree with you. Although I have been at vigils. We actually hosted one in our Camp Trouble one year, where the person, their vigil was they were out talking to people. They didn't want to be holed up in the little room and
Good for them.
Yeah, they were just out talking, and it was writing my book and talk to me, because I'm a bright, cheery person, so I want to be out kind of that way. Yeah,
that's cool.
I don't know. I do. We've done things where we're trying to bring people into. When you talk about how do we get that kind of back, it's hard because one of the things you can get isolated because you have your own little family group and you don't always see each other. So when you come together, you want to be with that family, and so it can appear isolationist a little bit, but you welcome people in. But I know if I was walking down the street as a newbie and there's some people that just walk in and say, hey, that is so cool. And that's why we put the cathedral and Bane stuff and our cooking stuff out in front. People will come in and ask questions, and that's more comfortable for me to talk about it that way. But I can imagine there's lots of people that are afraid to come in because they don't know that. And that's a feeling that would be nice to kind of figure out.
And I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at, like with vigils, when there's this big book and a long line and it feels like it's unapproachable. I want approachability, I think.
Yeah. And as a peer, I feel like I'm not going to get in, because there's royalty waiting and so it's like, I don't have 4 hours to wait. And how does someone who's not a peer come and experience that?
Sometimes I think it'd almost be cool to have only non-peers there to ask the questions about what made you, what was your path, why do you think you were asked, what was it, what was hard, is this hard for you? I don't know, that would be interesting to have a non-peer vigil.
I think the two of you should do like a 40th anniversary like reverse vigil here, and you can do that, like people ask you the questions and we get to celebrate the wonderfulness that is both of you.
Well, honestly, this September is our 40th anniversary, if you can believe it.
Really?
I mean, of being legally married. Longer in the day. Berek did have, that would be kind of fun. We've kind of, even though I go to them and it appears I'm having a great time, I really don't like going to giant war parties and things. I mean, I've done things that now I think that was kind of stupid. And
there's always regrets.
Oh, we all do those things, right? What did you just say?
There's always regrets.
Yeah. But we were talking about the fact that, you can have they partied in the Middle Ages or, the Ren or in Norse. They had parties and that. So that's kind of how we started this Lands Connect No Culture Night. It was kind of a reflection of, it was a joke actually, because we were this like Lands Connect camp and we were camping next to Danelaw and they had a very serious culture night with the blanket and we weren't it's kind of making fun of them, but they were our friends. So we were like, well, we're Lance Connect. We got no culture. We're going to have our no culture night. And so we like said we could do this. There are period ways to have parties. And so we got all the games that we could find. We had people bring in games. We cooked food, you know, we set up the whole tent. And we had people come in and just playing games of chance and gambling. And it was so much fun. And then one year we didn't do it and someone came, where's the party? And we're like, oh, sorry.
You get to
go, you know, people are then interacting and it doesn't really matter if you don't know them or not, because you're getting in on the game and moving in and about. And it was all period. And it looked, some of the best pictures I've ever seen are the pictures that people took at the No Culture Night, our first one. And it was really fun. And people were like, this is fun.
Yeah.
And this is how we would have said, you know, if we were going to sit around and drink and gamble, that's what we would have been doing around the fire.
Yeah, I love that you guys do these things and you just run with them.
Yeah. So we have our infamous, we do a raclette night now too. Raclette is a Swiss kind of cheese the farmers used to use, and they stick it on a rock near the fire and let it melt. And so you scrape the cheese off. They see them now, they use like infrared scrapers, but we decided to have a raclette night. We made so many friends. We had it over our fire and we were scraping, and it's been great. But those kinds of things, like we were like, if you got bread, come over, because we have a ton of cheese. We're running out of bread. And we had, you know, that we just met people that night too, who are like, can we really come eat? We're like, yeah, we always have too much food. And so things like that kind of make, I think, approachable, because it just always kind of cracks me up when people tell us that they're scared to come and talk to Berek and me, because we're both pretty shy people, unless, you know, we've had a drink or two, but then it's like a little opposite. But yeah, and I think we're just approaching SCA differently too about the kind of partying aspect. It's too old. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. The worst kept secret in the SCA is like most of us are introverted and totally shy, and we're afraid to go talk to everybody else, and then we come off like nobody wants to talk to us because we're quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Intimidating because we're shy.
Yeah.
None of us are intimidating. We're just all shy.
Yeah. And you know, people want to come into my camp and ask about stuff. We love to do that. You know, we've spent a lot of time, and Bane will talk for hours, you know, about his stuff, and it's great. And that's what we want people to do. And that's kind of why we liked where Camp Trouble was, because people would do that and come and talk. And
a nice high traffic area.
Yeah. So we'll see. We're changing things up a little bit. Camp Trouble is going to look a little bit different in the future, just because it's getting, I mean, I think we have too many people camping, so we're splitting up a little bit, but we're still all friends and camping next to each other. It's just, I was finding if I can't manage
different organization,
80 tents or whatever. And
that's a lot.
Yeah, we've had quite a few people. I don't think we've had 80 tents, but we've had quite a lot.
Wow. Hard to manage that.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of friends. A lot of people said, "Oh, can we camp with you?" We said, "Well, we're starting to get kind of big here, and it's almost like we want to include you, but when you've got that many tents, it's like we wanted you close, but physically it just doesn't work." But you know, like I said, that's why we had to make the decision. We said we're going to have to say no. Say, well, if you want to camp near us, you're welcome to. You want to come to our camp, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, we've just kind of split some, you know, and we're still two camps, but we'll be adjacent to each other. But then not one of us is managing the whole camp, which I think that was kind of one of those things where we had to step back and say, remember, we said we weren't going to do things that drove us nuts and not want to go to an event, kind of like how we had lived our first part of the SCA. So that's kind of one of the things where I just have to, you know, step up and say, okay, what's going to be best for all of us?
Set some boundaries.
Yeah, that's hard. I have a hard time saying no to people when they ask to camp with us.
Yeah, I don't think people understand that you have to manage the camp and like manage how it gets set up and stuff. Like, because you want to say yes to everyone, right? Like, because you want to be inclusive, but at the same time, you're like, how am I going to lay this out? You know?
Yeah.
And then you map it out.
Little camps. Yeah.
So. You map it out, and
they're too anal.
People don't come in the right order, and then it's just.
And I'm one of those people, and I think it, you know, kind of makes me good in the job I do too. Everything has to be planned in advance.
Yeah.
I can't come on site. I mean, I'm very much this how it has to be, and even like the meetings I have in my modern job, this is how it has to be. But I'm also really good at winging it if I have to. And I think that hit me once when I realized what's important and not. One of our investitures in the summits, everybody's clothes had come, but they were still working on mine. So a person drove off to get Berek and mine clothes. And when they got back, they found out that my dress didn't get picked up.
Oh.
And it was like an hour back and forth. And they're like, we're going to try. And I'm like, it's not that important. No, we need to get your dress. And I was like, I am not going to make the crowd wear. You know what? The dress is beautiful and I want to show it off. But in reality, me having a new dress or these people waiting here for 3 hours, and it was nobody's fault. It was just an oversight. And I'm like,
right.
So the dress did get there, but it was kind of like one of those, you have your plan. And if it doesn't, as a parent, that you have the plan, it's perfect in your mind. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. Unless, it's like planning for a disaster, like.
You got to roll with it.
Yeah. And so that's kind of been how I feel like in the SCA now.
I think we're all getting a master class in how to roll with it right now.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think it was hard to roll with it when we were young, but now as, and we can just say we're old and stuffy. And
when you guys came back from your break, what made you decide to want to do a couple of principality reigns?
Okay. So you want the truth? It's not bad.
Yeah, I want the truth.
It was really hard. I think because it was at the event that Berek won this first investiture that I met you. And I so wanted to talk to you and I couldn't remember your name. And I felt embarrassed. And I was like, I've heard so much about you. And I know. And I walked away from meeting you feeling like, God, she thinks I'm such a dork. Oh my God. But that's how shy people feel, right? Like I just totally blew that. I had this all planned out in my head, what I was going to say to her, because I really wanted to get to know her. And then I walked away going, she's never going to talk to me again in my life. So to be honest, it was kind of because of our oldest son. This is very modern. So he was in the National Guard and they were being sent to Iraq. And he was just getting back into the SCA and he goes, God, Dad, it would be really cool. You should win. You should win. We kind of went, it's not that we didn't want to do it. I mean, we had ideas and we're coming back too, but it was like, I don't know that if he hadn't said that we would have done it. And so it was kind of to keep him involved with us. And it was kind of cool actually, because he had a whole little crew over there because they were friends, some of them knew the SCA. They had swords over there. They had stuff. Skepti sent them favors and was fantastic to them. His mom baked them cookies. But it was kind of, we actually played off of it too. It's like when we stepped down, we just said, I can't, my son said, we would always say, we have treasures to share. My son's off,
Crusade
in Holy Lands, whatever. We have some treasure. So we played off of that and kind of kept him involved. And so I think for our reigns, that was part of it, is to kind of help him keep involved and be excited. And then it was just nice. I mean, it was, the summits had turned over too. There was a lot of different things going on in the summits and a lot of really cool things happening. And we were kind of at that point again where we were trying to make the decision, do we want to stay in the SCA? And honestly, we really weren't sure. And then we met this couple called Bane and Megan. And I just totally blanked on Twyla's SCA and she's gonna kill me. Emma and I were walking around looking at this really cool camp furniture because we were starting to build camps, and we met them and we kind of like just started smacking each other down about, well, it's on, we're gonna have the better camp, right? We're gonna have the better camp. Come Eagles, we'll see who has the better camp. And of course, well, if you've known Bane, that's when he started. He actually built the first cathedral for our investiture. He did it, yeah. And so it was kind of, we were all at a spot where we needed to do something different and see something different. And that was kind of that spur where we like, let's get really period and change things up. And we just met each other. And I just, they're two of the people I most admire in the SCA too, and on tier. I mean, there's a lot of people I really admire in on tier.
They both are so amazingly skilled and generous. Just so generous.
Yeah.
And they work as a team so beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
They would be an amazing couple to interview.
They would. That's a great idea. I don't know if Megan would do it, but yeah, that's a great idea.
We'll have to reach out to them. That's
So when when you ask what keeps us, I keep thinking back to it. It's always something that happens with a person or a couple that were like, I want to stay in and do this. I mean, they really kept us like, yeah, let's do this, guys. Let's all do this. And so we got to know them. They were on the Principality throne when we first started dipping our toes back in to the SCA. And so, yeah, was kind of nice.
Right. It all kinds of folds back into the friendship thing again. Is that, here weren't sure to come back. We met, suddenly all these new people who we were great friends with. It's like, yeah, now I want to come back again because I got all these new friends who I want to start having fun with. And that's what brought us back. I mean, obviously it could have gone the other way by saying like, well, I'm not interested here, but that's what helped. And again, for all these people who we talked about, Ben and Megan, Roland and Emma, these are the couples who we have these really strong friendship bonds with, and what brings us back every time.
I'm gonna bring up a picture.
Uh-oh.
There's a good picture of like your SCA family in Lands Connect. I think not this one, but let me see.
I have to scroll through it. So Berek, to get back into that level of tourney fighting, did you do specific training? And we can come back to that. Let's talk about the picture first.
So that's actually that's really not our SCA.
That's
family.
not your family.
No. That was the first Lands Connect no culture night, I think.
Oh, okay.
And so we all pose. I mean, those are all people that camp with us, but they're not necessarily long and tall, if that makes any sense. They're all close friends, though. Well, I don't know, Raphael, I don't think Kyrie's in there. Kyrie was Berek's very first squire, Mistress Kyrie, or
Really?
Yeah, she commented, "There's my knight."
Yeah. We met her and Graf when they were in high school.
Wow.
And they were eating like cold soup out of a jar or something. We said, "We're feeding you from now on." And we were like, we were only like 25 at the time, so yeah. But, that's sort of a famous picture of people.
That was the infamous picture from either the second or the third.
That was our first reign in Summits.
Are those? That's not the same blue and orange from your queen.
No.
All right. Well, I don't have the picture, but whatever. That was a cool picture anyway.
Thank you. I still have the blue and orange. I don't think Berek can wear his blue and orange. A funny story though, once Johannes, when he was like 18 or 19, he and his girlfriend decided to go to an SCA event. We weren't going. And so he asked, and he actually fit into Berek's coronation outfit, right? It was pretty splendor. And he was walking down Merchant's Row with his girlfriend, and he kind of thought, I'm going to see if anybody notices. And Caressa from Foggy at Pastiche was like, "Hey, where'd you get that outfit?" Here, right? She's like, and then she saw him. She go like, "Oh my God, you're Evan," because she had made the outfit and was like, "They didn't give that away, did they?" So that was kind of funny.
Yeah, he had a whole cover story. So it was like, "Yeah, I bought all this stuff off of eBay. They didn't want any of this stuff anymore." Oh God, that would have gone over well.
How to crush a costumer's soul.
One of my most favorite events, we're talking about like being old timers, was I was up, it was what's the war? Oh gosh, I'm so blanking and so getting old. It's the Storm Gods, right? And I had been camping up there for the week, and it was right after Johannes' second baby was born. So I was taking care of Ava, and so I brought her down with me for the day to the Viking camp, and then we walked into the event, and Evan was like, kind of introduce her to the old people. And so, because you have to know, like, this is a legend. My oldest son still thinks his Grendel is a giant, literally. Because Grendel probably was 30 or 40 pounds heavier when he was young, when Johannes first knew him, and he's giant, right? Evan, to this day, he was pretty muscular, is a little afraid of Grendel because that's that child. And so he wanted to have me walk Ava, his daughter, around to meet her. And so she met Grendel, and she met Ludwiga and sat on her lap. And, it was like all the people that Evan had known that were his kind of people he'd grown up with or people we'd grown up with. We took her around, and she just loved it. It was kind of, that was kind of like, third generation coming. But it's just not something that their family, it's just not what they play. So but she might once in a while come. But it was just kind of funny, and to see people's faces knowing that because they were around when Johannes was born, and then to see his daughter, they were all like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, it's interesting to watch people's reaction. We brought our son to 12th night last year. I don't know. Time is
It was last year because
Was it last year?
Molly.
And you know, I think the last time they had seen him, he was 4 or 5. He was this little kid, and he's 6'5" now. And people were like, "Oh my god!"
Time flies.
It does.
Yeah. And then they always got the, I remember when you were a baby, and, you know, Johannes always got, I changed your diapers. And he's like, okay.
What am I supposed to say to that?
Yeah, really.
Thank you.
You're not now, so
I've grown up.
yeah. You changed my own. Yeah. It's kind of, I know it's different having children in the SCA and watching them, and you know, they do remember things. It'll be good for them. And if they want to come back, they come back. And if they don't want to come back, you know.
I think as long as we set up a magic game for Sam or a D&D game to play at an event, he's all for it. And Molly, our daughter, she's starting to sew, and she likes to weave, and she's null binding. So they're both really interested.
Yeah, I've seen the stuff she's done on Facebook. It's really cool. Yeah, they yeah, it's pretty funny. When there was stuff to do, they liked it, you know, and they had fun when they were little. I think it's as they get older into that tweeny teenage area that it's like it's kind of mom and dad's game.
Yeah.
And you know, he couldn't fight. They didn't have like the youth fighting, so he really couldn't fight. He couldn't do anything. So yeah, but yeah, it works out. He has fond memories. They both have fond memories of it.
Yeah.
It's not always fun.
Well, I miss him and his wife. I like them both very much.
Yeah.
So
maybe someday when their kids are older, I think. But,
yeah.
Or they might come with grandma and grandpa. We'll see.
So Berek, let's circle back. What kind of training did you get into when you decided to fight in summits?
I guess it depends upon which choir I was obsessing over. It's kind of a tough call. It's more of a whether I was obsessing over someone and I had to see them get trained up, and if they're going to get trained up, I've got to get trained up, and if I'm going to get trained up, I've got to start lifting more, I've got to start running more. So it kind of felt like it wasn't so much about me, it was more of I needed to be that role model. So my squire, you know, will say, you know, if I'm doing this, you've got to do this so you can earn your belt. So, I mean, really nothing formalized. It's not like, you know, 8 weeks down, I'm doing this kind of a workout or whatever. It's just pretty much like anyone else, just, 3 days a week, I was either, spending an hour at the gym, or the other 2 days a week I'm running. And, that's been pretty much it. Nothing obsessive, I guess. But, basic workout and such. For me, I would always tell my squires that fighter practices are not workouts. Fighter practices are fighter practices that, in the mornings, you should be doing your PT and your exercising and developing our conditioning, and fighter practices where we just worry about swing and stick. Nothing big, nothing exotic. I know that I've had, squires in the 80s and 90s we would always like, oh, we've got to hit this gym, we've got to do this, we've got to do this training. I know my current squire, we've both been doing virtual running, in which, before the shutdown came, we would always get together 3 times a week, and we would, run in the morning. We had started off as a sort of a couch to 5K. And now we're doing, now it's like, oh my God, we're running 7 to 10 kilometers, Tuesday or Thursday and Saturdays and Sundays, depending on if we're suffering or not. But the idea is that, the idea of like that partnership of training really helps. And I know it's definitely helped me, because it's like, wait, how am I running 10 kilometers when before I would run out of gas at 5 kilometers? So, and again, we're doing it virtually. All we're doing is we just, plug into our phones, like, okay, I'm starting my run, I'm running, and we've got our headphones on. So, we're talking to each other over our cell phones the whole time. So it's like, oh, well, an hour's done. I guess we're tired now. We're going to call it a day. So that's pretty much it. So
yeah, I think when you were younger though, and like really trying to go for crown, it was a lot of fighter practices, traveling to different fighter practices. But now it's like, Yeah, Berek's kind of funny because when he stops, like he doesn't have a squire, he kind of doesn't focus on fighting, and someone will come along saying, "You need an Ulfric," or someone like, "You need another squire," or Cathal, "You need to find a squire so you start fighting again." And his squires keep saying, "I think you have one more in you. You need to really go out and train and do it." And we're like, "I don't know."
You know, yeah, because I just retired. You know, so it's just like, no, I just want to enjoy now. I want to be able to, you know, I'm happy with, I still want to do the training. I still want to go to practice and have fun. But, you know, as for anything serious, like says, I think I'm too old.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think you should do you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you feel, we're always like, if you have it that day, you have it.
Yeah.
You know?
So before the shutdown, you were still going to fight practice.
Yes, and again, wasn't, you know,
kind of tapering off.
Kind of tapering off. I would always tell my squire, you know, I'm only good for like one fighter practice a week. Let's go down to Adiantum. Let's go up to Terra Maria. Let's see if we can really drag ourselves all the way up to Freem and Stromgard, if we can find where their fighter practice is. But no, we were, you know, I would try to maintain that at least once a week. I would encourage my squire, you know, if you want to go to 2 a week, go for it. You know, we would hit our local practice and such, but yeah, trying to stay active. Yes.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just hard for us now. I mean, as you know, we're not old, but we're older, and an hour and a half drive sometimes is like the bones hurt to sit on for an hour.
Especially after fighting for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brutal.
But when we were young and moved here, both of our kids, I mean, I would meet Mark with the kids in their car seats every day at 5:30, get off work, and we drive to Portland once or twice a week to fight when he was younger and really wanting to fight. So yeah, it took a lot of dedication. We traveled quite a bit.
Or early on, when the kids were also so young that we would always, let's drive up to Madrona. There's an event happening there. Yeah. Let's drive up to Blathanor. Let's go farther up the Sound. There's all kinds, and you know, we would do a lot of travel. Before we took our break, when you know, my oldest was in middle school, the running joke was like, oh yeah, we would load up the van. We would have the back would be filled with sweaty leather armor, and we'd be up in Blathanor or Madrona or farther north. When my son started doing roller hockey, it would be, all right, let's load up the van. The back is filled with sweaty leather armor. Let's drive up to Blathanor or Madrona or farther north for a hockey tournament.
Yeah. So, he was a goalie, so he had like the heavy, I mean, his armor bag was bigger than Dad. So, you know, it's pretty funny. Yeah,
so for me, it's just like, I'm doing the same driving, but I'm not getting the joy out of this. And my son certainly is enjoying going to all the tournaments.
Yeah.
So it balanced out, and it was great.
Yeah. A little payback for all the times they had to get drug along.
Well, not so much for payback, because before, when they got drug along, we were usually camping out in the middle of the field. For my son's tournaments, we were staying in hotels with swimming pools and bars.
Yeah, that was the difference.
Yeah.
We gotta get used to this hotel, you know, pool, bar, the whole bit, traveling.
You know, I don't like 12 nights.
That's awesome.
It's been a long ride. I think we probably cut back, but we kind of go through these. I think right now we're kind of that low because we're a pretty major change in life. But we'll be back. You know, we'll be those same people. I don't know if you ever have noticed they're like the older couple that's been around forever, and they show up to every 12th night in the same outfit from like AS 20.
Life goals, SCA life goals.
Yeah. It's like, that's going to be us. They're like, oh, that was so.
Well, if the garbage is worn out, you know, no one remembers it.
Well, right. If you're only wearing it once a year and it's still
good.
Fabulous.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Back in the day. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those early, like how to garb yourself books that the SCA actually put out. Oh my gosh. And I was telling Stephanie, I think it's hilarious. Like the epitome when we joined in the West, you were pretty classy if you went to like the Scandinavian stores and they sell the table runners by the yard, right? And you just cut it, and those, you know, you pin them front and back with straps, and that's the apron dress. I mean,
that was fancy.
Yeah, the authenticity is so different. I mean, what I see people do and what you guys do, and the research is so different. You know, and it's not to negate anything anybody did. It's kind of like shopping at a garage sale and shopping at Neiman Marcus, right? Because but there's was like pretty.
The internet has opened up so much information and pictures and everything. So it's, it's not really the same.
Right. And we had people teach us. I mean, we started both of us learned to sew from Laurelin, right? So we started here.
Yeah.
So we were really lucky that way.
Yeah, I've learned so much from so many people in the SCA. It's amazing. And like I tell people, when I talk about the SCA, I said, I have to admit, I've met some of the weirdest people I've ever seen in my life in this group that I would care never to see again. And I have met some of the most creative and talented artists that are amazing, that if their work was like out in public, they'd be in museums, I think. Some of the work that you see, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
And then the friendships.
Yeah.
Well, you're no slouch of a seamstress yourself. You do some really nice work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I've always told people I just don't want to work that hard. It takes a lot of work. I mean, and even the standards, when you look at what people are doing nowadays, the research is there, so that makes it nice, but it's just impressive to watch people. And the nice thing is most of the people that do that are willing to talk about it with people and have fun. So
yeah, you have to force us to shut up.
Yeah.
Missy, what were you gonna say? Rifkin, sorry.
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
I was going to compliment Liesel on her seamstress skills and say that, you do it at the level that brings you joy, and that's enough.
Yeah, I do. And, I've got I'm trying to like re-clean my sewing room office mess. And I look at all this fabric going, I'm not even sewing. Why do I keep us like, no, in my heart, that blue and purple Lance Connect is in that fabric right there. And I'm kind of one of those, I kind of was self-taught sewing. I mean, I had a couple classes, but I was not, ever really good at it. And I am not a very intuitive person or visual. And so I can't start sewing a project until I've kind of figured it out and my brain's in the right space to do it. Because inevitably, if I force myself to do it, I'm going to mess it up because I don't know. It just takes me a long time. I'm just not there with seeing the pattern in the fabric. It really takes me a while to do. And like I said, I have to be, and I know when to walk away, because if I cut that fabric, even though I've measured it 3 times and I think it's right, my brain is saying this is not the day to cut that fabric. So I've learned to walk away.
I have the same thing. When I buy fabric, I get a vision of what it's going to be, but then I spend sometimes years refining that, and then it gets to kind of the point of, okay, now I'm ready. But it takes a long time.
It does, and people, if you've seen my section of clothes, I mean, the stuff I made Berek wear. Oh my gosh, I'm surprised he just didn't even not get out of the car, and some of the stuff I got. Not some of it was pretty pathetic, but it was really like sewing on your own, trying to figure it out. Yeah. So it was, and I think that's okay. And I think people need to know that. I mean, they look at, you with your beautiful garb, and Rifkin with all the stuff that you're doing, and our tents, that friends have made, and all the things we have. It didn't come in our first 2 or 3 years of the SCA.
No,
not even the first 10 years.
20, no, 30, or yeah. So
my first outfit was a thrift shop, raw silk, like pirate blouse with a wool plaid tablecloth with a bungee cord for the waistband. That's what I wore to 30th year.
Yeah, and I had, I think, a peasant blouse left over from college, from high school, because I was old enough that they were cool back then. A gauze skirt that I'd put together, like, just like a dirndl skirt, and then this vest that I made, a total sewing machine, right? And laced with leather. And I think I still have pictures of it. Every so often my old pictures pop up on the internet of the clothes. I think that was like the epitome. That little purple dress right there, that's what all the girls were wearing. The little just open here, laced right here with it was pretty funny. Kind of the Ren Fair look. But yeah, it's come a long way.
Yeah, I have no pictures, and I kind of wish I did, because I would like to have that before and after perspective for people. So
We should do like a fashion show at 12th night, like the oldest thing in your closet and then the newest thing, and you come down on the oldest thing, then newest thing, and people can see like there is a progression.
yeah.
We have, I think probably by our third event, I went to my mom's house to sew cloaks. These things were made in probably 1979. They don't look any different. They were this poplin polyester outer with store braid and fake sheepskin fur. They weigh a ton. I mean, they kept us warm, and they're still out in our garage. And every so often, I should just get rid of these. I'm like, I'm too embarrassed to give them to Goodwill. I don't think I could give them to Gold Key. And, you know, someone's going to have to see that someday and say, this is what we lived in.
And the cloaks aren't bad.
I would still
Back
be
in the day when you were cool if you had 100% cotton. You know, that was really
Natural fibers.
Yeah, natural fibers.
So Eduardo just got on the comments and says that you guys are some of the best community builders we have. And we talked about that earlier, but I just wanted to nail that in.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh.
It's true. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For realsies.
I don't know. Maybe I sometimes communicate a little too much. There could always be, you know, I went through when we came back, I think I went through trying to not knowing anybody. So I kind of went through a little bit of a wild period trying to fit in. And Berek's like, who do I have to apologize to tomorrow? And I believe you were one of them, Ashaksi, at one point.
So that situation had a lot to do with Evan being in Iraq. And you would never have to apologize for that. I'm going to get teary. I was very honored that you came to me and that we had that conversation and that you trusted me with that. So,
and it's things like those that keeps me coming back. It really is the deep friendships that don't necessarily even have to be in an SCA setting. But it just makes it that much better because I really was that little girl that grew up with the fantasy of, I've just always loved it. I always, wanted it. I was poring over my mom's art books and, trying to dress that way. And my family just thought I was nuts, and I've never lost that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's awesome. Well, do you guys have anything else that you want to talk about or any stories you want to tell?
Stories. Oh, we have stories. Which one? Which story? I was thinking of one, I'm not sure. It was about a certain first Crown Prince of Antir who slid right out of his chair in his first court. He maybe was celebrating a lot. And he was sitting up there with the King of the West, right? And you just watched him literally slide right out of his chair onto the ground. It was hilarious. Yeah, there's lots of stories. I think, it's kind of funny, old timers. We just need to get back and tell stories more.
Or maybe we do another interview where you guys just tell stories and we get it on video.
Yeah,
archives.
Think of them. I'm sure as soon as we get off of this, I'll remember all of them. But there were some pretty funny stories.
Would be really
some around
cool.
Kids and some just around people. I think one of the funniest things is Ludwika was fairly new to the SCA when we stepped up, and she actually was our herald. People are shocked sometimes to see that. And it took, I don't know how long it took me, how many years it took me to connect that she and her sister were actually siblings. Having known both, I actually knew her sister long before I knew her. But I don't know. There's just a lot of old stories of really interesting things and people out there that probably shouldn't be forgotten.
Well, that's
Eduardo will always be to me like Eduardo's the one in his peacock cape. I'll never ever forget the peacock cape. And there's just always things that stick in your mind, like your first king and queen. To me, Radnor and Shannon Morgan, who was his first queen, are the epitome of the king, because he was a tall, dark, handsome king, and she was this tiny, petite queen, and in the co-RD kinds of things. And it was just like, that's my fantasy. And when people say, oh, you were my first king and queen, I'm kind of like, oh, okay,
Sorry.
Sorry. I have to think it back to what I felt. I'm like, oh yeah, I still to that day think of that, and it's important. So
yeah,
no matter what you do, even a laugh or a comment sticks with people and can make or break it. So.
It's true.
Eduardo says you guys were his first king and queen.
Yeah. I think I honestly remember meeting him. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
there's just, I mean, there's so many people here that we've known that don't always play, but Eduardo has been around for a long time. Yeah, we're probably getting to be some of the older people that actually still play, but we know them forever. Like Alfred was around when I remember meeting Alfred, and
He's someone else we need to interview.
yeah. I think the first thing I saw about Alfred was him falling on the field in a fight at a crown tournament, and his knee went out, and these people just went over and like he was telling them what to do, right? They just went over and like yanked it back into place, and I was like,
oh.
So that always kind of stuck with me. But he's always been one of my favorite people too that I've looked up to, skilled and nice, and yeah, there's just so many people in this kingdom that have been inspirations to us and still are, and a lot of the younger people nowadays that I look at are really inspiring to me. It's like, wow, how do you do that, and how do you keep up with all of it and do so much more? And yeah. Cool.
So we're at about 2 hours.
Oh wow, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know.
It's been wonderful to talk to you both and hear your stories, and me being able to talk to you, the two of you that have built such like great community. It's just been really wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
I really appreciate this. Thanks.
Thank you for your time, and thanks for sharing your stories. And maybe we can do more of it at some point.
Yeah, you need to get an old timers. You have to be like this age or over and come tell stories.
Like the virtual campfire or something.
Yeah, like before we all start losing it in our elderly brains. No.
I'm already starting to lose it, so I don't know. All right. Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Yeah,
Have a great
I love
time.
your series. It's been wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us. I think next week we're talking to Duke Aaron Graves. Is that right?
Yeah, the 15th.
Yeah. From Atenvelt. He's a Laurel and a Knight and a Duke, and he's a pretty neat guy.
He makes
So
cool pottery.
Yeah. So thanks again, both of you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sakti. Thanks, Raken.